Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Sarah Velasquez. I am the communications coordinator for the K-INBRE. And today we have a couple of presenters for our seminar series they're at KU Med, and I'll let them introduce themselves in a little bit. First of all, I want to go over a couple of housekeeping things. First, please, I'm going to go ahead and share my desktop. Here is our website, and I want to remind everybody that you can go here to find all kinds of information about the program and anything you might need about undergraduates or about our course, important dates, all of that great stuff. We also have, underneath the undergraduate tab, we have a tab called Seminar Series. And in the Seminar Series, we have this Seminar Series Evaluation tab, or link. Please, when we're done with the seminar, please click on that link and leave us an evaluation of the seminar and let us know how you feel about it. We record all of the seminars and post them on here when we can. So if you miss a seminar, you're welcome to come back and view it, or we have all these older seminars that you can go and look at and learn about various professional development things like giving an oral presentation or how to make a poster, all of those great things. So please keep that in mind when you are participating in K-INBRE. We also have all of this great social media, so please join our social media. And we have Facebook and Twitter that we post on daily, and we have Instagram, YouTube, Flickr, all kinds of social media, so please make sure that you start following us. So I'm going to stop sharing now, and I'm going to allow our presenters to introduce themselves. As I said before, please mute your microphones. If you have not, I will mute you, and you may not be able to talk later if there are questions. So let's get started.
All right. Well, I'm going to share my screen with everyone. My name is Heather Collins, and I am the Assistant Director of Research and Learning at the University of Kansas Medical Center in the A.R. Dykes Health Sciences Library. And are you all seeing my screen right now?
Yes.
Oh, good. This is good news. We'll make it look like a presentation. There you go. And I'm joined today by my colleague, Rachel Vukas. Rachel, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. It's nice to join you today. Heather and I will be doing this together, and I am the one of the health sciences librarians, and I work mostly with the School of Medicine here at KU Med Center.
Mm-hmm. And we're just pleased to be with everyone and to share some information about plagiarism to help you to safely navigate and ethically navigate your research journeys. So we're going to be talking about what it is, how you will avoid it. Our intention today is to be very plain and simple. We want to be accessible, and we want this to just be as clear as possible. So we're going to speak plainly and straight to the point today so that you can run forward with the content that you're needing to communicate and really have a good grasp of this so that you can navigate this very well. So we're going to be talking about what it is, why it matters. We're going to talk about who is susceptible for falling into traps, who's doing it, and we're going to be talking about tools for preventing it. So you're going to leave with a toolkit and knowledge to help you to avoid this at all costs. So let's go ahead and get started. Plagiarism. We want to define plagiarism and what it is. So I need you to think to yourselves for just a moment about how you would answer me if I were to ask, and if we had the ability to be interactive, what plagiarism is, what the definition of plagiarism is, what that means, and what that word means. Okay. So The actual definition is the act of using another person's words or ideas without giving credit to that person, the act of plagiarizing something, and it actually comes from a Latin word meaning to kidnap. It means to kidnap or to steal. All right, so you're stealing someone else's words or ideas without giving credit to that person. So as you all know, this is a really important area. People very much are very upset about instances of plagiarism, and it can get you in a lot of trouble. But first, let's talk a little bit about some examples of plagiarism. And so you are probably familiar with these, but not putting quotation marks around language that you've borrowed from another source. So if I were to use the famous saying, Toto, I have a feeling we're not in Kansas anymore, and I were to cite it, you can see it's cited. It's cited incorrect. Oh, no, it's cited correctly. But I didn't use quotation marks. That is an example of plagiarism because you're not describing that as a direct quote. So you're actually saying that those are your phrasings and your words. That's plagiarism. Trading words with synonyms but keeping the same structure. So if you were to say, take that quote and turn it into Toto, I don't think we're in our home state any longer. By right-clicking on some of the words and using the synonym finder in your word processor, that's plagiarism too, because you know this whole statement is obviously someone else's. Providing false information about where a quotation was derived. Toto, the only thing that we have to, the only thing that we have to fear is fear itself. And if I were to say that that was by Lincoln in 1861, that's not true. Does anybody, I would ask you if we were interactive, if anybody knew where that quote was from. We get responses saying that it's FDR, and some people say it's Churchill. And I would have to actually go and search that and look it up. But if you are lazy and don't put the correct information there, or if you incorrectly attribute it to someone else, that's plagiarism. And claiming others' works or ideas to be your own. So if I were to say, I came up with a great physics formula, E = mc squared, that's plagiarism. Or if I were to say, I wrote a wonderful symphony, it's and I were to take one of Mozart's symphonies and scratch out his name and put my name on it, that would be plagiarism. So this is what it looks like, and these are some common examples of plagiarism. But there are also many nuanced ways to plagiarize. And this is a chart, and it actually had about 20 other gradations that I cut out. But this is a chart describing various types of plagiarism. So up on the top row, you can see some, I guess, less obvious types, and as the color goes darker, it becomes much more blatantly plagiarized. So identity theft, like my Mozart example, is a blatant example of plagiarism, right? We all would recognize that instantly as being wrong. But at the top, maybe half-heartedly citing your sources, not doing a very good job, being kind of sloppy, that's a type of plagiarism, and you can get in trouble for that. Being miscuing. So if I were to say a quote and I would leave out the word not in front of it, that's taking things out of context on purpose, and that's a type of miscuing, and that's a type of plagiarism. Reflection. So if I were to copy someone else's works, so much so that someone were to think that I was standing in front of a mirror and someone else's paper was staring right back at me, that's also a type of plagiarism. Cobbling things together in a mosaic so that your voice doesn't come through in the paper at all, and it simply is rehashing someone else's work and many others' works so to the extent that your ideas and your synthesis does not come through. That's plagiarism too. So you can see that there are many different types, from warping the original context and content to mixing it half and half. A ghost citation is something where you maybe have used some material, but you don't have the citation there, or maybe you have a citation that isn't cited in both places, in text and in the bibliography. And so on and so forth. So there's all these different types of plagiarism, and you kind of have to be careful as you're moving forward that you're really being careful about using other people's ideas and thoughts and giving correct attribution to them, using it ethically. And it matters a lot. It really does matter. One of the reasons is that we hope that the work that you're engaged in now is reflective of new ideas and new knowledge that's being generated, new synthesis. And this is one of my favorite quotes that says, a child, a mind, or a paper is not a vase to be filled, but a fire to be lit. And we want to see your fire. We want to see your creativity and your perspective coming through. We don't want to simply have you rehash other people's works or regurgitate others. We want to see creativity coming forward. But plagiarism is also important because it is considered in academia to be just something that you do not violate. You do not cross the line. And these are examples of the University of Kansas Medical Center's policies extracted from the faculty handbook, the student handbook, and our researcher handbook. And I'm sure that each of your institutions has language almost identical to this. This is pretty standard. And you can see that there are consequences for violating plagiarism, and issues are being caught plagiarizing, and it is something that will get you in trouble. There are many reasons to cite your sources beyond simply getting in trouble. So we want to avoid any negative consequences, but then there are also a lot of positive ways that citing sources appropriately can help and bolster your paper. So it can avoid any potential negative consequences, right? That's we want to avoid anything bad, but it's your responsibility as a researcher, and you're shouldering new responsibilities writing your papers. So we want to let you carry that well. And when you do that, it allows readers to track down your sources. They're able to follow your work and replicate it, verify it, and understand it better, which is your goal as a writer and a communicator. It adds credibility to your work by showing others your thoroughness and your integration with existing knowledge and quality information and knowledge to date. So you want to demonstrate that. It gives validity and weight to the work that you are doing. And, truly, it adds credibility. And as you begin to participate in higher levels of research, that's going to be expected. And there's new levels of expectations as you move in that direction. And simply, it's the right thing to do. You would want others to cite you and give attribution to your ideas, and you're going to do the same and participate as a good colleague in your new research community. So we're going to be doing that and enjoying it. We want to kind of identify right now, step into another gear, and we want to identify the people that are engaged in plagiarism. So how can we start identifying who is doing it, who's responsible for it, and who's a culprit, right? So I think that we've seen examples in the news of politicians that get caught plagiarizing, artists who do the same. There are many interesting cases, especially with the Disney Corporation and with businesses and photographers, etc. There, you'll find that the news is replete with examples of plagiarism and copyright, which is a little different, but people kind of being upset when their toes are stepped on and vying for their intellectual property, wanting people to know that either for financial reasons or political reasons, business reasons, etc., that that content belonged to them. And so you'll see that often. But it's also a massive concern in higher education, in academia, and in research even after you graduate. So as you're a lifelong researcher, a professional in your career, this is going to always be important. And the Chronicle of Higher Education has brought this forward as an area of concern and interest. And one of the things that the Chronicle has brought forward recently is that students are confused about what types of information counted as common knowledge and what types of information required a citation. And so there's some ambiguity about what actually needs to be covered, what actually needs to be cited. And we're going to talk about that in just a little bit. But students are expressing a fear that they might be participating in some cheating and not know it. They might be cheating and not know it. So that's something that we're going to be talking about and thinking. Unfortunately, ignorance is not a defense. And if you plagiarize, you didn't mean to, it doesn't matter. If it happened, it happened, and that's the standard. So we want to be armed with a lot of information and knowledge as we move forward. Another article cited the fact that even faculty members disagreed on when paraphrasing becomes plagiarism. And so if faculty members weren't in agreement on it, how were students expected to know what was best to do? So there's sometimes some education is needed as we move forward. And then also, even within groups of academic specialties, respondents appeared to have a fairly wide range of criteria for plagiarism. And that's true, so it's not always black and white, as I showed with the previous slide that had many gradations on it. There are many ways that could be construed, where the result would be construed as plagiarism. And it's not always so black and white, but your duty is to try and be as clear as possible and communicate as well as possible so that you can avoid this and be as ethical moving forward as you can. And do we have K-State? I think we have some K-State friends with us on the call today. And this is a snippet of the K-State Honor Pledge Violations website. And K-State has a really interesting program where students who are caught plagiarizing or working unethically in a class or on a paper are brought before a court, so to speak, where they are judged by faculty and peers, and their case is reviewed, and they get to stand up and explain, and there are others there that contribute to that conversation. And then they post the results of that case on a website, so you can see, they don't post the names, but you can see the consequences for that are doled out by the institution and peers. And it used to be that institutions had very little choice in following up on plagiarism. A lot of times the only result was expulsion or flunking a class. And K-State has been much more proactive, and you can see that they have different types of consequences as they're working with students and teaching students about this. And so they have a wide range of consequences, from needing to write a reflective paper or retake a class or enroll in a course on ethics and academia, or having a grade docked or something like that. So they have a wide range of results that apply. But in the world, in the research world, as you begin writing papers, that becomes more of that becomes more wishful thinking, because the results for research papers are a little bit more serious. So we're going to talk a little bit now about how you can prevent any of this from happening. So we're going to roll up our sleeves and look at some strategies for preventing it, and also recognize when it's occurring. And then we're going to circle back and talk a little bit more about consequences. So I'm going to turn it over now to my colleague Rachel. Vukas.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen here. And, okay, sorry. There we go. And I didn't even think about scrolling down to the right place ahead of time. Sorry about that. Sorry, I thought I had it there. Let me try that again. I thought it would start right on the one I selected.
If you go to slideshow and then the tab at the top that said slideshow,
right,
and then from current slide.
And that's what I thought the bottom was supposed to do, but thank you. Okay, some of the prevention strategies are a little obvious, but others are not. And number one, you need to know when to give credit to your sources. And this is a citing sources decision tree. And you can see that most of the time you need to cite. If it's a quote, yes, and it tells you how you have to cite, with double quotation marks. Is it a paraphrase? As Heather illustrated earlier with the Toto statement, yes, you need to cite it. And is it someone's, another person's idea? Yes. And the only reason that you don't need to cite it is if you do know that it is common knowledge or it is your own specific thoughts. And an example of common knowledge would be such as gasoline is flammable, or the chemical symbol for sodium is Na. We know that every state is represented by 2 senators. The chemical formula for water is H2O. Those are types of things that are common knowledge, simple facts. But we didn't design this decision tree. It came from someone else, and you can see that we have cited it down on the left. And so you will have to do that type of citation too, because we would be citing someone else's work or using someone else's work without permission, and especially if we didn't get permission or we didn't cite it. So you do need to give credit to all your sources, and this is not an exhaustive list, and I'm not going to read all of these, but you may not have thought of citing a website or social media like a Facebook post or any image, photo, a presentation that you might borrow slides from, those types of things. So obviously you're thinking of written text, but there are lots of other types of media that you also have to cite and give credit to. So you need to know how to cite a source. And this is an example of a short quote. You can just put it in direct quotes, 420 years ago, so forth. But if you have a longer citation or a longer quote, you can put it in a block quote, as is illustrated on the right side of the slide, and you just insert it into your text in that way. You can cite it within your text using author and date as the first one illustrates. The second one is using a superscript number, and depending on your style manual, your number may be represented in another way. And it is linking what you have cited. It'll link it to the full citation. And that's what this is your reference list, sometimes called references, sometimes called works cited. And this is linking it from what's on the previous slide. So if these didn't have numbers, if it just had the author's name followed by the date that was given in the text, you would be able to find it in your reference list by that information. And this presents the complete citation information so that someone could find it. And the same thing with the numbers. If you use numbers in your text, then it should match up to your numbers in your references cited list. Now, I talked a little bit about the table, and there's no way to put this in quotation marks, but you could cite it in the text. You could use a credit line with the item, which is what we did. You would definitely need to list it in your references. And depending on what it is, when you're using an image or a chart, you may need to get copyright permission from the publisher of the work or the author. And so those are all things that you have to consider. We actually paid for permission to use the chart that Heather showed you earlier with all those different gradations of types of plagiarism. And so we got permission, and we had to go through copyright clearance and pay a fee to be able to use that. Another good strategy is to use a citation manager, such as EndNote or Zotero. Those are two popular ones. Mendeley, RefWorks, things like that. And this is helpful because you can easily download all the citation information you need within your citation manager. And it includes it when you download it in there. And that way you know you will have the complete information. You won't be leaving out a page number or a volume number. And you can also change it to the style that may be required by the journal you're writing your paper for, or what an instructor requires. Another option is peer review. Ask a mentor or a colleague to proofread it. They may find things that you're going to miss because you've worked so hard on that paper and you're so enmeshed in that paper. You're not going to notice that, oops, I didn't include this number, or there's a problem. Another option to help you out is make an appointment with a librarian or a writing specialist. The librarian can help you with copyright and the citation parameters that you need. A writing specialist can help you with your wording, your phrasing, or in-text citations, and so forth. And most universities will have those, and even some corporations do as well, and research institutes. So you always want to make sure you enlist that help. And Heather, I'm going to end sharing.
Okay.
And let you finish out. Where's my stop share? There we go.
Okay, and I will share mine. So, okay. So at KUMC, we have a resource called LibGuides, LIBGUIDES. And I think most academic institutions, most universities and colleges use LibGuides. And each library will have, and each university, I promise, will have pages dedicated to plagiarism, copyright, and we have one dedicated to authors' rights in the publication process. And one of the things that we do at Dykes Library is we try to educate our researchers and students on their copyrights, their authors' rights, and what you can retain and what you should be able to protect as you move forward in the publication process. And that might be another discussion for another day to delve into that world. But I would just like to point out that libraries and scholarly communication centers at universities, research centers, etc., are very interested in helping you to navigate this water. So I would encourage you to take a look at those resources. And also an interesting way to kind of begin wrapping your heads around some of this work and examples from your discipline or disciplines would be, excuse me, a resource called Retraction Watch, which tracks retractions and tells the story of researchers who have published works and who might have run a sconce of plagiarism issues, copyright issues, intellectual property issues, and then we'll talk about the retraction that occurred afterward and what happened to the subsequent research that was built on that piece. So it's a really fascinating place to look at examples from your disciplines that you're in. I'd encourage you to take a look. And then the Office of Research Integrity, Governmental Office has case summaries. So those are an interesting thing to read too about researchers and grant writers, etc., who've run aground or who have retracted information, or that'll tell the story. And sometimes those stories are really wonderful learning opportunities for you to read about and share with colleagues. Then there are two other resources that you might already use, you might have at your institutions. They're curated by the same company. One is called Authenticate and the other is called Turnitin. And they are plagiarism detection software pieces. And Authenticate is used more by researchers, those publishing scholarly content and scientific content in particular. And then Turnitin is used by undergraduate and graduate students. And often you'll need to upload a paper into Turnitin. And what these software detection, plagiarism detection software programs do is they check your paper against many known sources. They check it against several library databases, several online sources, and they try and find information that was directly quoted that might not have quotation marks. They might try and, it tries to identify instances of plagiarism. Now, I'll just let you know that there are very few ways to say the sentence, childhood obesity is a rising epidemic in the United States. Okay, that sentence is really difficult to say in many different ways, right? You can only say it in certain ways. And so there will be false positives. You'll find things that are flagged that way that might be general knowledge. But and that sentence actually should use some evidence to back it up. But so they're not 100% perfect, and they're not meant to be that, but they are meant to help you as researchers identify places that might be suspect, and then you can review it. It's simply a computer logarithm, but it can be very helpful and catch things before they are published. All right. And if you don't have those resources, if you don't have a software program to upload your paper to before you publish it, as Rachel said, having a colleague read it and read through it is extremely helpful. Someone who can give it some good attention and some scrutinizing eyes. This is a quote that I'd share, and it says that, then as teachers, tutors, and librarians, we all need to focus our efforts not only on raising students' consciousness of the complexities of plagiarism, but of raising our own. And so I'd like to challenge all of you who are in this leadership program and who are moving forward in this work to be mentors and exemplars, to really take hold of the things that we've talked about today and model it when you're giving presentations, even if you feel it's a little bit more informal, to always be conscientious about doing this well whenever you're tasked to do it, and to be a leader in this world, in this realm. So I'd task you to take these things to heart and to check out some of the resources, use your tools, and be reflective about plagiarism moving forward. So, and in saying that, Rachel and I wanted to show you our references for this presentation so that you know that we did that. Are there any questions? Are there things that you've been thinking about or this presentation has stirred in your mind that we might be able to answer? I think that
so you touched on this. This is Chapes at Kansas State.
Okay.
You touched on are using your own work.
Oh, mm-hmm.
So can you go into a little bit more detail about what is and isn't appropriate about using your own work?
Absolutely. Rachel, I'll just dive in and then please add to it as well. So when you publish information, oftentimes you sign a copyright transfer agreement. You sign a contract with the publisher, and it's really exciting because you're being published. And when you sign that information over, you're signing over your author's rights. You're signing over your copyrights to another publisher, and you no longer own those words and that research, and sometimes that data as it was presented and arranged. So so then if you come back and want to write a second article on the same topic, and you want to reuse sections of your other paper, you might not be able to do that because you don't own it any longer. And so if you cite yourself, you have to cite yourself as you would cite any other researcher. And it's really difficult because you might have given away too much information. And so that becomes a problem, and self-plagiarizing, because you feel like those were your ideas in the beginning, but in order to publish them, you gave them over. And so there's a new initiative that's going forward, and it's being led by science. It's being led by the sciences and biomedical sciences in particular, and that's open access. So it's a way to publish papers where you, the author, retain the author's rights and the copyrights, and you can continue to write and publish. You also allow others to quote and reuse your content as long as they give you attribution. And sometimes that is not asked for, but often it is. And you know, usually there's a copyright symbol which is 1C with a little circle around it, and a Creative Commons sign, which is this new way of sharing information where you preserve your author's rights, is 2 little C's in the circle. So that's something else I'd encourage everyone to check out, is the Creative Commons open access copyright. It's something that I put on, and Rachel and I put on the bottom of most of our presentations, our posters, my own personal blog. Most of the things that I share publicly, I'll put a little Creative Commons sign on saying that, hey, I made this, I still own it, you're welcome to cite it and reuse it, but that's how it's going to be. So does that end? Rachel, did you have anything to add to that?
No, I think you've covered it. I just encourage people to look at open access. I know that open access has a different model, of course, where you usually have to pay to publish there because those journals are not supported by subscription funds. And I have had some faculty say they don't trust any journal that requires payment. But there are some predatory journals, but there are some very strong open access journals that have peer review, that are excellent, that are credible, and librarians can always help you determine, at least we often do that with faculty, to determine whether it's a legitimate publication or not.
Does that, I hope that helps. If have you run aground, or have you found that self-plagiarism is a concern in your area?
Well, it's something that we all have to be aware of, and teach our students that you just can't reuse your work from one paper to another.
Mm-hmm.
I totally agree with you, because it seems obvious, or it seems like it should be available to do because, well, that's my work. But so it's quite a surprise sometimes when they realize they have to cite themselves just like anyone else.
Absolutely, and turning in the same paper over and over to different courses, often that's prohibited in the syllabi, but even if it's not a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's a really good paper that you think you can get a lot of mileage out of, you probably can. It's not a good idea.
One of the things when we mentioned authenticate and turn it in, those sources also have open access blogs on their sites, and they have some very good articles about plagiarism and things that are going on, and it's a good way to stay up with the literature. And the government office that we listed on that slide, on those case summaries, those cases have usually gone to court or have at least been, maybe not gone to court, but there's a suit, or they mention the consequences of what happened after that. And it is kind of it's a little scary, because you will see that some faculty or researchers have actually lost their positions because of what they did in their publishing.
That was an excellent question. Thank you so much for bringing that up. Did anybody else have any thoughts or reflections or questions?
This is me again.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't necessarily having to do with plagiarism, but you mentioned predatory journals. And I think that it's important for you pointed out that the librarians can help you determine whether or not a journal is predatory or not. And I think that everybody needs to be aware of those resources. There used to be a resource online called Beale's list of predatory journals, but it's gone offline now. He's discontinued it. And so it's very important that the librarians be aware, be available for people.
Right, we try to promote that activity, and I've worked with a lot of individual faculty. There are criteria that you can use to determine whether a journal is legitimate just by looking at its website. And often these journal questions come from solicitations, as I'm sure you're aware of. You get solicitations asked to publish in this journal. We do peer review and we'll publish within 10 days. Right. And things like that are red flags, but you look at their website, and if they don't have an archive, if they don't have an actual address, only a P.O. box. I looked at one site and I linked on the editor link, and all it had were blank photos, little figures in the photo, and there were no editors. But yet, if you hadn't clicked on it, it looked like, they said list of editors, but they don't really have any. It's amazing. Some are less subtle than that, but we have a criteria developed that highlight the red flags, highlight the problems, and also there's the directory of open access journals. And if a journal is listed in DOHA, they're usually quality, but we don't use that as our only criteria. So yes, it is a big problem, and I'm sure other universities as well as us do workshops on it as well. It's a good point to bring up about Beale's list. I know that librarians have used it for a long time. Faculty have, I'm sure. And it was also controversial because it was one person's opinion as well.
Absolutely. I know this might be a lot of information, and I know that we're going a little into a little bit of a tangent, but NIH grants are paid for by the people and for the people, and so the health sciences researchers have been pioneers in making sure that grant-funded and federally funded information that was generated is made available to the public through open access venues within 1 year of publication. And that's been in place now for quite a while, for over a decade. And so researchers that publish through NIH-funded sources will have wherever they publish, they must have that resource available in full text on PubMed within 1 year. And so there's a whole compliance world that's based around that. But it's one of the things that happens, and there's a law that was passed to have journals relinquish some of their proprietary grasp on that information and give it back to the people. So.
And it may not be the actual journal document, it may be the manuscript that was accepted. That's the format that you're allowed to do. And it's also for National Science Foundation grants as well. And I know the Wellcome Trust also requires that. So I think it's great that our field is looking at that and making sure that material that federal funds have been used for is available to people.
I'll just jump in. Can you guys hear us from Haskell? This is Bridget from Haskell.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, great. We were able to unmute. We have a question here from a student.
Oh, I just wanted to know about how we handle data sovereignty from our tribes. If we're doing research for our tribes, what we can and cannot publish, I guess, and what belongs to our tribal governments.
Wow, that's a deep question. This requires a conversation, and I think that that's not going to be something that we could easily answer just right here for you right now. But if we were able to sit down and consult with you and help read some of the documents and maybe talk with some of the stakeholders and do some investigation, you have a little bit of homework in front of you to answer that question. And I would suggest maybe getting some faculty and maybe librarians or general counsel at your institution involved in that conversation, helping you navigate it. So you've got the tribal piece that is another layer of bureaucracy. And then you have, simple copyright information, which is, of course, very bureaucratic as well. And then there might be, is the data involving IRB at all, human subjects or people?
Usually it does. I'm an environmental science, so usually it involves sacred spaces or basically like areas. I know that there's been a push in tribal country to kind of map these areas, but when it comes to publishing, they have the tendency to pull our rights to be able to kind of publish our own information. I kind of just wanted to know, like, legally what were my rights as a scientist to publish and where our sovereignty from our tribes come from. Like, 'cause it's such a weird thing.
Well,
classes at law school that deal with an entire semester on this question and those types of questions in law school. Yeah. So the Wheat Law Library might be another resource for you, as well as Washburn University's Law Library.
Right.
I'm sorry, Rachel, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, it's a very interesting question, because I don't know if you published in a journal, what the effect is of you signing away your copyright, and whether they have, since you are part of a sovereign nation, does that make a difference and as to what rights a publisher has over you? I don't know. And that's just a very complex and interesting question that I haven't been faced with, but Heather gave you some good ideas to check on it. And that's
better for us to be really careful about what grants we go through, and because data and for people it's such a big issue that makes new scientists kind of want to shy away from working with specific areas, even though it interests us.
As an interesting point, it would be nice one way to simplify it would be to publish that data through the stakeholders that curate it. And you can create Creative Commons data resources and make that data Creative Commons, and then that would be open for all researchers, you and colleagues across the world, to review and write about and help contribute to the environmental issues at hand. It's a thought. They would still own the copyrights to it. They would still own that data, and they'd need to be cited.
There are different levels of Creative Commons. It doesn't have to be completely open. There are some restrictions you can apply and still have part of it open. So it's, I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you.
So we talked a lot about today plagiarism, just the basic ability to not kidnap or steal other people's ideas, to use those ethically. And then we're kind of broaching into the realm of copyright now, and who owns what, and legally where those lines are cut. And that might be another topic for another day, but you all have wonderful work ahead of you, and we know that this will start you off on the right path. So if there are any questions, we would be available to answer them afterwards. If anybody wanted to email us, we'd be happy to help.
Are those email addresses in your presentation, correct?
Yes.
I can provide those to everybody for sure.
Okay.
All right. I think that we are out of time. I hate to cut things short since we have had so many good questions, but we are out of time. So I would want to let's everybody thank Rachel and Heather for their presentation. So if you can't hear people clapping, it's because they're muted, but hopefully. But I will post the video and the email addresses to our website and make sure everybody has that information. And thank you so much for coming and presenting to us today. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.